Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I hope you're safe and well. It's a lovely sunny afternoon here in the UK in Surrey. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Louis Hendriks, who is founder and MD of Global Value Web. And today we're just going to talk about value chain. So, Louis, lovely to meet you. How are you, my friend? Long time no see.
Yeah, well, indeed, nice to see you and nice to speak to you again. We should talk more often. Apparently, it hasn't happened much last year. I'm doing good, and it's also sunny here in the Netherlands. Looks like we're in the same boat from that perspective.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad. I spoke to someone in Milan today, and it was not so sunny there. They weren't very happy. So, anyway, the last time you and I met each other, actually, talking of Milan, what a good segue that is that we met each other at Paperless Labs uh, way back in
2019.
2019, long time ago now, in
Yeah,
April 2019. So, a lot's changed since then.
one
What
could say
hasn't
that.
changed though is that the need for Pharma to look at the supply chain and how it works, that hasn't changed. In fact, it's maybe more accelerated now over the last year or so, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. But before we do that, perhaps you could just give people a very quick overview of the business Global Value Web itself and your background as well, because I think it'd be quite important to understand where you're coming from and put it into context.
Yeah. Let's see if we can do that in a nutshell. You mentioned supply chain, so I think that's probably the first word I would like to scratch and replace the word supply with value. I think that's also where I'm coming from. So who am I? My name is Louis Hendriks. Indeed, I'm the founder and managing director of Global Value Web. And I've basically been all my professional lives in something called value chains and value networks as such. And it's always been about the data. About 15 years ago, my previous life was Capgemini. Have been fortunate to travel all around as such, learned a lot, did a lot. You can do so much more with data than what we were doing at that point in time. And when you work in value chains and whatever, and you realize it's about the data, it's tough for companies to get their heads around that. So I purposely created Global Value Web to let data flow through any type of value chain for any type of industry. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a few months after I really was on the road with, with Global Value Web, I came across a life sciences company. And we've been working in life sciences ever since. It's our biggest industry. And I learned a lot there, especially about quality and development and research. And I see all the distributed data there that is so much not connected. So that's our mission, to connect all the data in those type of value chains for better outcome for patients. It's as simple as that.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about value chains then. So, what, in the simplest terms, what do you mean by value chain?
In the simplest term, I think is how product moves to customer as such. It's not about supply. It's really about the demand that's coming from the market. In this case, it's patients, unfortunately, because the life sciences market is still about patients. Probably in the future, it will be about people that are seeking health. And then meeting their needs with products or solutions or whatever that is going to bring in the future. So a value chain which doesn't exist because this never has been a chain, but people can relate to a chain. It's a complex network, right, on how things come together and how ultimately also a drug product arrives at a patient as such. So bringing product to customer, that's the essence of a value chain. Doesn't matter how small or how big that network is.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the last year, how do you think the pandemic has impacted how companies view the value chain? Because obviously, it's been, I know you don't like the we use the word supply chain, but that's been a buzzword talking about the supply chain in terms of pharma products and so on, how they've been impacted both by the pandemic, but also if you think about Brexit and things like that as well, how that's had an impact as well. So how has the value chain been impacted over the last 12 months, do you think?
Yeah, I think the anything digital and data, we should say thanks to the pandemic, for sure. I don't think value chains are really yet in the true mind, in the mindset of most people involved. But what has increased was already increasing last few years, because when we started, nobody knew about data, nobody talked about it, etc. About 5 years ago, people became much more interested in that and taking much more, wanted to know more about it and how they can contribute it. And yeah, I think the pandemic really pushed that another few steps forward as such. So people talk a lot about data, and that's a challenge, because data, what is data? You really have to name what is something. And also when we started in life sciences, we started in a particular area. We started in the area of quality control.
Right.
And we started actually with what was the master data for the laboratory. And then yet another term, master data. People cannot relate to that. What is that? And when you talk to the people in the lab who are working at the bench, what are they working with? And that's where it comes. It's the specifications, it's the laboratory methods, it's the sample plans, it's the tests. So the first thing, if you want to make a successful value chain of any kind, you got to speak the language of whatever you are touching.
Yep.
And that's what we do. And now we don't only do it in quality, we do it in planning, we are getting into the manufacturing. We are also not only in the commercial operations, but we are also working in the development as such, cleaning up the stuff. In the development, often the stuff sits there that is subsequently used in operations, so we work there as well. And now we are also getting involved in real-world evidence, real-world data, because so far we predominantly are working with a product in the value chain, not so much with the customer yet, but that's now coming. It's very interesting, actually. That whole journey of real-world evidence, real-world data, we got on that also sort of accidentally. But it's really learning the patient, learning the customer for that particular value chain better. So we used to say that we work for the life sciences value chain. Last few years, we are saying we are really working for the patient-to-patient value chain.
Right. You mentioned a bit earlier that obviously value chain is still not seen or recognized by a lot of people within life sciences. Why do you think that is the case?
I think that's traditionally like that. Everybody is good in what they do, and they want to do that better, etc. And in the world of life sciences, there are many stovepipes, but the research stovepipe, the development stovepipe, and the whole manufacturing stovepipe is definitely there, and it's still there, and we have to erase that ultimately, but we also still have to erase it in the commercial side, in the production side, etc. Big pharma, they have global networks, so many manufacturing locations, stuff comes from everywhere, and it has to flow together, and everybody works with everybody. So any big pharma uses another big pharma for this and that and what have you. So maybe everybody is looking after their own shop, but in the end, they work so much together. There's a much better way of sharing the data and what needs to be used across. And mind you, I also say data way too often. So in this conversation, we probably do. But the people that work in Global Value Web, they are the domain experts. They're either domain experts in quality or in development or in manufacturing or planning, and they talk the language. So the word data.
Well, you mentioned data. So you talked about data. So, I mean, when you mention data, so I mean, should it be connected from product to customer? And if so, why? And is silo data a bad thing?
No, yeah, okay, but that's a fair thing. You cannot do everything, right? And yeah, maybe we do the small data. Yeah, you know, if a company can already connect the data across the value chain in a better way, following the product end to end through that value chain, that's not really big data that everybody now is talking about, where you do market research or even real world evidence, because that will ultimately result in big data. But we are looking really at the efficiency and effectiveness of getting product to patients. And data is just something that the forgotten area where still benefits can be achieved to be more efficient, to be more effective. And I think that's our focus to help companies to get there.
Right.
And
Go on, you were say.
yeah, I was just thinking then, how do you get there, right? And I think that's also very important. And data in the 90s was hidden in the systems. So we take the data out again and make it very visible and put it in the face of the people. Are you talking about this? Are you talking about that? Do we understand the same thing, etc.? So really the language so that the people understand. So it's people and data. And then comes process, and then comes technology. You know, our clients have plenty of technology. They got the best technology. When the data is much better applied in that technology by people who truly understand it, then you make progress. Then you get ROI. And I think that's still a battle. And yeah.
Well, that leads on to another question, actually. So why are companies still struggling with data, especially when it comes to gathering it? And what hurdles do they face?
I think partly why companies are struggling is because they don't bring the right people together.
Right.
You got big, let's say, a quality area or manufacturing area. You got the development areas, and then you have separate. You got your data scientists somewhere in a corner doing fantastic analytics. Then you got your IT people sitting somewhere doing something with databases, etc., creating apps, etc. Why are those people not coming together much more often? As such, in order to make true progress, it's not about the technology. It's about the left part understanding the right, and the right of the left as such. And that's not happening enough. You know, I also come from an area where there are a lot of IT people walking around, etc. But my job in my professional life always has been to be the bridge between the two. And it's not only the two. Now so many more disciplines have to come together. Because when you really go deep into the data, it touches everybody. That means that, you know, it's almost like, I make often that comparison actually. People that are able to read and write, well, in today's world, you cannot be data illiterate anymore. You need to pick up that part and a certain amount of data knowledge, data science, and apply that. It's just like reading and writing. Everything is out there. How do you get it? And how do you see it? And how do you make that into actionable items, as people often say? That's by organizing your data in a much better way by professionals who know how to. And at the same time, using better technologies while you are at it. But don't replace your technologies too soon. That's also what I often see. When the technology doesn't seem to work or so, another technology. Well, maybe you didn't put enough manpower and brain power into getting the data properly organized. And that's why you're not getting the return.
Now, you mentioned about obviously communication being key between the different departments. But surely, you know, I've spoken to a lot of companies now about how they've progressed over the last year or so because of the pandemic. And a lot of companies have said to me, look, we've been forced, or not forced, maybe not be the right word, but we've had to be more collaborative and work closer together. And communications become so much more important because of the pandemic, because people aren't necessarily working in the same office or building any longer.
Yeah.
The place. So that's led to greater collaboration and a better understanding of how people should be collaborating. So do you think that coming back to my initial question earlier on, the pandemic has forced people to move in their direction a lot faster and a lot quicker, and therefore you are now seeing more of that collaboration that you need to have so that people can share the data, understand the data, and start to interpret that data better.
I think that definitely will help all this communication, as we are now basically also doing. I think we in the end we still need to travel and look people into the eyes as such, but far less than before. And we can have these communications around the world and see each other and see the expressions because words is just a part of the communication, and that's in the data world the same thing. We think we have so much captured already in the systems and that is probably structured, but you'll be surprised how much knowledge is purely in the head of the specialist and whatever. So how do you get that data as well added to the rest and make that available for smarter systems? It's exactly that type of thing that we're also looking at and addressing. So if we keep doing and working the data as we have been doing for whatever many years, and we're not applying the new capabilities, then we would not be making progress either. So besides making those value chains much more better functional and efficient and effective, what it also brings is far better quality and far less risk in that entire value chain. But you need to capture that knowledge that is embedded in the brains of people. So I'm a curious guy. I always have been a curious guy. So I meet those fantastic companies that have fantastic technologies that we are seeking to embed in our data services. And with that, we are often on the forefront from new things. And I find that small companies can be very creative and can be moving also much faster in many situations. So that's also was actually one of my personal surprises, I have to say, when I started this. Because 15 years ago when I started this, my expectation was I would be finding smaller companies that would have access to the same global reach as multinationals would have. I still believe that is true. But I got into the big companies again and the big pharma again very quickly. It didn't take long. And what happened to my surprise is that big companies do have an interest for small companies and work with them for forever, for that matter. Because working in this space, you have to learn your clients very well. You need to understand the network, you need to understand the people, you need to understand the product, you need to understand their contextual environment, etc. And it all needs to sink in the brains of our people, with the people that sit on their side, and all that communication needs to happen. And only then we can work the data well and apply all those fancy technologies as well moving forward.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, so in conclusion, I mean, what do you think companies should be doing to improve their value chain going forward?
I think they should abandon the technology push. I think they should involve all their disciplines and much more taking a holistic view at the data. And it can be done per functional area. You cannot boil the whole ocean, as they say. You got to start somewhere. But this digital transformation, because that is now the topic in industry, if you really want to do that, you actually have to start 1,000 initiatives, etc., and or 10,000 initiatives. But in a certain way, a certain structure towards a certain logic. And that logic, in my view, is very simple. It's getting that product to customer. And all that data that you generate around the life cycle of that particular product, you got to add that to that product. And it's as simple as that. But that's a journey. And what I'm hoping for, or maybe that could be an outcome of putting this video on LinkedIn and whatever, finding the executives in the industry that have the same view and a vision and a passion, and then that they reach out to people like me, because when you're able to drive this with a value chain perspective, I call it the value discipline as well, your whole perspective of things change as such. And you don't get bothered or hindered anymore by technologies or people who know or don't know, or processes that are, but they can be much better. You can let the data speak for itself. Like us, we also need to find the clients that share the thought.
Right. Well, there you go, viewers. If anybody's listening to Louis right now and agrees with his worldview, then please make sure you get in touch with him. And if you don't disagree, actually, make sure you put some comments below to tell him why you're not agreeing with him. So, Louis, where can people get more information if they want to know more about value chain and also global value web?
Well, we have a website like anybody else. It's a shitty website, sorry to say that, but we are working on improvement. Easy to find on LinkedIn as well. So type in Global Value Web or type in my name as such, and walk around with a lot of phone and a lot of phone numbers. So I think very easy to reach. Fantastic. And the personal touch is always the best touch, I would say. We've got now 100 plus professionals working in this domain, and we're growing fast, even in the pandemic times, or maybe because of the pandemic times.
Yeah, well, that's good.
This is on the data. We need to put it on the value chain.
All right. Well, so there you go, everybody. If you would like to know more from Louis about the value chains and how he can help you, by all means, check out the website, get in touch with Louis directly through LinkedIn, leave comments below the video. Louis, I appreciate taking the time out to talk to me. I know you have to rush off to another meeting shortly, so I'm going to say thank you very much for taking time out to talk to me this afternoon. I wish you and your loved ones and the company lots of success for 2021, and hope you stay healthy and happy for the coming year. And the same applies to everybody else as well.
Thank you, Rizwan. Really appreciate it. I like the approach, and I wish you also a lot of success, and talk to you soon.
I look forward to it.